So they lost, I'll bet you they lost a good 30 people.
Over that one dispute.
Over that one dispute.
Those of you that do know me and have been following me for a while, you know that this video has been so hard. I'm gonna cry talking about it. It was really hard to put the whole thing together. I had to hire an editor. It's definitely the longest amount of time spent on a video and the most frustrated I've been with making a video. And I'm just telling you guys this so that you know, like, this video is like such an important video, and that's why I didn't just decide to scrap it, because I feel like this information can help someone from the cult or even us members out here. Like, I know that knowing this information now, learning this information now has helped me as someone who's left this polygamous cult. But it was really hard to finally get this information out to you guys, and I've had a few crying sessions today because this is the last day of editing, and I'm finally like watching it over and over and over again, and then like having to make sure that everything is accurate has been kind of stressful. But I wanted to just make sure that this video could be out for the public and for the order members who deserve to know the truth, for ex-members who deserve to know the truth. Just like, knowledge is power. And obviously, like, I filmed it with my blonde hair last year, and it's taken so long to finally get out. So I feel like I'm beating myself up a lot because we did lose some of the footage, but you can still hear us discussing it. So I'm going to try to make sure that any parts that don't make sense, I'm explaining in clips like this one. I wanted to explain a few things before we get into this video. For anyone that's new here, I discuss in this video numbered men a lot. And so if you don't know what a numbered man is, the meaning of having a number and being a numbered man in the cult that I grew up in has evolved since 1935 when the group started to now. Now, numbered men are like very righteous men, like they earned their numbers. My dad's number is 36. And the leader who created the order, Brother Eldon, his number is number 1. Brother Ortel, the next leader, is number 8. And Brother Paul, the current leader, is number 9. That it is such an important thing, and the numbers are very, very sacred to the group, even to the fact of when they die, they get that number on their headstone, and the wives too. So if you notice, we talk a lot about Afton, who is Brother Eldon's wife, second wife. So on her gravestone, it shows 1, 2. Which is 1 for Brother Eldon and 2 for second wife, right? And then we also have LaDonna's gravestone. She was married to Brother Ortel, the next leader, and her gravestone says 8-2 because she was the second wife of Brother Ortel, who is number 8. So these numbers are very sacred. They take them to the grave, literally. And it's kind of like, if you, it signifies if you earned a number in your life, you earned your place in heaven. I did also want to mention, because we do talk a lot about LaDonna and Ortel and the 7 brothers, and for new members coming into this channel, the leader now, his name is Brother Paul. He has 27 wives and over 300 children, and he's the current leader today, and he runs the whole order, the whole cult, with him and his siblings, right? So there's 7 main brothers. So the 7 brothers, and they're the sons of Ortel and LaDonna. Sorry if that's confusing, but again, Ortel was the leader before, so it got passed on from Ortel, number 8, to Paul, number 9, and his brothers run things. So you'll hear name drops a little bit here and there, like of Daniel, who's Paul's brother, Jesse, who's Paul's brother. So just to clarify, so that anyone who's watching isn't like, who's Daniel, who's Paul, why does she keep talking about numbered men? If you are interested in learning more about the history of the numbering system and numbered men, I do have a segment on my channel called Culty Cup of Coffee. We do it every single Sunday. We've been doing it for over a year now. And if you join us tomorrow, we are discussing who holds the number 60. So join us tomorrow if you'd like to learn a little bit more. This story is very important for order history, and it was something that was covered up. I really feel like there's a huge reason why none of us knew about this story. I didn't hear about it until I finally started talking about it with this person who, luckily, they were willing to talk about it, but we are concealing their identity. I will briefly mention, we discuss the 10% forms and the inventory forms. We do discuss the inventory forms and 10% forms, and I do have a video explaining those forms for anyone who's new here. But I just want to brush over this really quickly. In the very beginning of the order time, so 1935, when Brother Eldon was a leader in 1935, the forms, signing these types of forms was a thing, but it was not enforced. Like in the order today, if you don't sign your 10% or inventory forms, you're not necessarily considered an order member. We talk about today how it evolves into going from something that was a choosing to sign a form in the name of the Lord to you cannot be in heaven if you don't sign these forms and be a member of the order. So please leave questions in the comments down below if I don't cover everything. I feel like I've watched this video so many times today that I'm like mentally unstable now. But I feel like I've covered every aspect of it. But if there's anything that I missed or any questions you guys have, please leave them in the comments box down below and I will try to respond to any questions you guys have. I was hoping to do also a part 2 because there is more questions that I have too. But let me know in the comment box down below. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Amanda Ray, and whenever I was 17, almost 18 years old, I left the polygamous cult known as the Order. We do have a guest here today, but you guys aren't going to be able to see their face because this story it's a story that the Order has hidden for years. And I actually am just learning about this story, and I'm grateful that we can be able to have this story to finally be public. But we're going to be blurring the voice for protection, privacy. I know a lot of you guys know about the 10% form and inventory forms that the Order has, but for those of you who don't know, the cult that I came from, it's kind of like a requirement that you have to sign this form known as the 10% form and then an inventory form. So the 10% form means that of everything that you make, you are giving 10% of that to the Order, to the Lord. And then the inventory form, I remember filling this out as a child. Every year, you would write down everything that you had of value, and it was the Lord's. So basically, like in the meditations, all of your incomings and outgoings are in the name of the Lord, and that's how they have you follow through with that, is by signing that 10% form and signing that inventory form. But I obviously was only in the Order for 17 years, 1995 to 2013, so I didn't know that there was more history beyond the 10% and the inventory and where that all started. So I was just talking with you. I thought that the Order started in 1935. Boom, we were all signing forms at that time.
Nope.
So do you want to go into depth about where did that all start?
It was actually this property dispute that triggered these forms, and this all happened in 1990.
1990?
After 1990, Paul would make you sign it for legal reasons, so you could not take it back, take any of your property back.
If you guys watch my Culty Cup of Coffee, there's actually a lot of times where you'll hear, oh, this person had a number and was given a number in the group, but then they decided to leave and over a property dispute. There was a lot of times back in the day there was fighting about property.
Yeah.
But so this is the one that was the final straw. Where was it that Paul was trying to take the property from this family? Was the family not willing to give it up? And also, for any Order members watching, can I say what the case is called? Okay, this is the Cottonwood case. For anyone who may be a little bit familiar with this, I had no idea about this though. There's a reason though. They don't want us to know. So this is the Cottonwood case. You guys are gonna learn with me. How did that whole dispute start? It was in 1990.
Yeah, there was a couple cases where there were property disputes before 1990, but they were with former leaders. And they handled things differently. Eldon, he had 2 property disputes. These people, when they left the Order, they wanted their property back, and he gave it back to them. He was good about it because it wasn't like it is today. Sometime during Brother Hotel's leadership, things had changed. And then it changed even further with Paul. So now in 1990, with Paul, there shouldn't have been a problem ever.
Yeah, that's interesting to know though that it was easier to get your property out back in Eldon's time. 1990 comes around. There's it was a family that were they trying to leave?
No, not at all. In fact, Paul assured them that they would not lose their membership in this whole thing, and then they ended up losing their membership.
I guess I'm confused because usually it's when someone's trying to leave that they're trying to get their stuff. But these people were wanting to be members of the Order. So then was Paul just like, I want your property?
What happened was the property was in Afton Brown's name. She was Brother Eldon's second wife.
Okay.
She left it to Afton Brown, and Afton had 7 children. She was the steward of that property. In the 80s, her name was taken off of it. Like she was listed as the president of that property.
Did she know that?
In No, and forgery had to take place because she would have to sign some sort of quitclaim deed or something to that effect, giving rights away, power of attorney, something. She signed nothing.
What was it signed over to?
It was called VBA Inc., and she was the president, and so they kept the name VBA Inc., but then they put who is now working with Arrow Real Estate. So for some reason, without Athens' knowledge, they took her off and put these other people. Daniel went and pulled some work permits he was going to build a house out there. Anybody within a certain radius got this letter letting him say yay or nay. And one of the guys that owned property out there, he got this letter. So he called out there and said, hey, who's building out there? Just out of curiosity. And they said, nobody. Athens didn't know anything about it.
Yeah.
And the reason she didn't know anything about it is because she didn't get one of these letters. That's how she was aware that they were shopping property. They were shopping to sell it. Daniel pulled the permits, made them aware that something was going on out there. And then after further digging, they found out they combined it with the whole Sherwood market in Ogden.
Wow.
Oftentimes in business, they'll put a lucrative business bundle with a bad company. Tax reason, Cottonwood people are like, why would you bundle the Cottonwood place with Sherwood Market? Sherwood Market's always been a loser. But the only way Cottonwood can be a winner is if you sell it. That's how they found out they were selling it.
Their plan was to just sell it without letting the real owner know?
Yeah, there was 7 families. They were on the property, all were members, all family, and they all bought an acre. They all have an acre and their house sat on that acre. It wasn't subdivided, they just knew where their property was, but the owner had taken out a loan on this property to invest in the dry farm and didn't tell them. Anyway, she had no idea. Had they not paid the mortgage on that loan, all 7 of those guys would have been homeless. Afton ran what was Imperial Market, which used to be the order store. This is before John's Market. Some guy, suit and tie guy, he goes down there and he's asking about buying the place. And because somebody said she works up there, well, she said that place is for sale. And he assured her that it was. Like, it's for sale, it's right here. And so she was shocked. She was not happy.
Yeah.
So that's the whole reason there was ever a property dispute, because the owner, they were not only taking loans against that property, but they took her name off of it, shopping to sell it.
So it's completely paid off, and then they just decided to throw her name off and put their name on, which, do they have a title? Like, how do they do that? Don't you have to have a title company or a title agency or something like that?
Yeah, but these guys, they're the masters at forgery. They have their own notaries. They can make a legal document, and it's legal. It'll go through the court system, no problem. Back in those days, you had a paper statement, and everybody had your signature.
True, yeah. And you're signing 10% forms and inventory forms.
That's right.
And they can just take that signature and put it wherever they want.
Yeah,
It's totally illegal.
Yeah, totally. And then they can have their notary notarize it.
Mm-hmm.
By law, the notary has to see your ID, and they have to watch you sign that paper. But if it's an in-house notary,
They'll just say they did.
they just say, yeah. And then you just gave away your property. You didn't sign it. You weren't there.
Yeah.
You know.
Wow. So she goes and talks like, okay, my house is for sale. I didn't know that my whole property was for sale.
Yeah.
What was the answer?
Well, this guy that was looking to buy it, he's like, well, look, it's right here. That really upset her. And so she's like, what's going on? So then they started asking questions, and that's when she found out that she was taken off. But she had no idea she was taken off.
Do you know how long it had been going on that she was just la la la, had no idea?
Yeah, she was taken off in '86. She was taken off when Ortel was around, but I don't know if it was Ortel that did it. It could have been Paul, too, because Paul was riding along with Ortel for the last 3 years of Ortel's life. So.
Right. What would Ortel's purpose be to do that? Because he's leaving. How did it escalate from there, then? Because she brings it up, and then what are they just like, oh, that's too bad, like you're not getting it back? You know,
Paul's the leader at this time, and so they're calling these meetings to straighten this thing out, and even back then, Paul was hard to get a hold of. I mean, you know, and that's why it took so long. It took months, because you could never get everybody in the same place. Afton's son, Afton asked him to help, but he was in Minnesota, and so trying to get him in Utah and Paul in the same building was a little bit tough. But anyway, to answer your question, there was a series of meetings. The family basically demanded that they put that property back the way it was, because it was super shady.
Yeah.
No consent, and there's no reason. Afton couldn't be trusted. And so they basically demanded, you put everything back the way it was. Now that we found out that you're taking out mortgages on this property, we better subdivide and get everybody's acre in their name too, because what if you're to lose this property? Yeah, you're going to lose the whole 40 acres, including the 7 acres that these kids bought.
Yeah.
So the demand from the Cottonwood people were, let's put everybody's name on their own deed, on their own property, on their own acre, and then you put the remaining property back in Afton's name. And then, if people want to sign it back over to you, that's their prerogative. But you don't just go and forge things and take it. I mean, there's a lot of details in there that I'm missing, but basically that's what ended up happening.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, is that the first time they did that?
Who wants to make a scene by standing up against them?
Yeah.
They always pull the religious card and say,
This is the Lord?
the Lord, yeah.
So then it ends up having to be put into court, right?
Well, it ends up going there, but not until after all this stuff was over with. What Paul did is he knew he was going to be in trouble because of the whole forgery aspect. The Cottonwood family started talking to the tax attorney, and that really spooked Paul.
Yeah.
And so he thought, okay, I'm in trouble.
And this is the tax attorney that doesn't work for the...
Yeah, exactly. And so he thought he's going to be in some hot water when they find out, when they start comparing signatures and find out that Afton never signed anything over and they took her off. So he voluntarily put it back the way it should have been. But by then, several people had seen his true colors.
Yeah.
None of those people wanted to leave the order, none of them.
Yeah.
In the beginning. Well, after a series of meetings, they got to see his true colors, and then a lot of them, half of them lost trust. And so it was splitting up families, because you would have a husband who was devoted, and the wife didn't trust Paul anymore.
Yeah.
And on the other end of the property, it was vice versa. You'd have the wife that trusted Paul, and the husband didn't.
What was the main thing that was causing do you think it's just because Paul was like, well, you should be okay with me acting like this? Or did Paul admit, yeah, maybe we shouldn't have done some illegal things to obtain the property?
He never did. He basically pulled the Lord card, and which really bothered a lot of people, because Afton was as devoted as an order member as anybody was.
And she probably, with a good conversation with him, they could have worked something out.
Yeah.
She could have been happy and he could have been happy.
Yeah.
He just decided to just rip it from underneath her.
There was no reason she couldn't be trusted over the next person. There's a lot of things that play a part here. Paul's married to Elise, and so all 3 of his daughters were married into the inner circle. And so when that property was transferred into their name, that just showed that they were on a property grab. Back when they bought this property in 1944, it was only $3,500. It was out by the time it hits 1990, we're talking 3 or 4 million.
Yeah, it was 40 acres, right?
Yeah. Back then, the nearest neighbor was a mile away.
Yeah.
By 1990, you've got $1 million houses out there.
Cottonwood property, I'm wondering, is it actually by the Cottonwood Mountains then? Is it close to that?
Yeah, it's right by Little Cottonwood Canyon. It's in between Little Cottonwood and Big Cottonwood Canyon. Larry Miller's son lives out there. I mean, it's prime land. So what happened was Paul put everything back the way it was, like the family demanded. And I could say the family requested. But no, at this point, they were pissed. They said, this is how it needs to go.
Yeah.
If it doesn't, we're going to get this tax attorney, blah, blah, blah. And so they demanded it, and he did it. The family thinks, and this is speculation, I'll admit, the family thinks Paul's thinking was, okay, I'm going to go ahead and look like the good guy here, and then these people are going to turn it back in, consecrate it again, and then I'll get it back anyway. I think that's what the family thinks Paul was thinking. Back in her name, and then they went and deeded out each individual acre to the people. And that way, if something happened to the big piece, it didn't leave 7 families homeless. So anyway, everybody got a deed, and then she got the remainder of the property, just how it should have been.
Yeah.
By this time, you had husband against wife, and you had different people, and about half of the people out there didn't trust Paul anymore.
Yeah.
And every single one of them did trust him before this happened.
Yeah.
Like, they were devoted order members. Then it kind of backfired on Paul, because he was sitting there waiting for everybody to come turn it back in. And they were out there having their own little family meetings, and they're like, yeah, that was shady from start to ending.
Yeah.
How that happened. They're out there taking loans on this place, and if they default, we're all screwed.
Yeah.
They decided not to turn it in. Some of them still wanted to.
Not a single one of them was like, here, you can have this back.
Well, actually, there were. One of the guys out there, he was the top earner in the order. He was a salesman, and he made the most money for the order for many, many years. And he was so devoted, and he didn't want it. Even when Paul ended up kicking the whole family out, he closed out the statements and wrote checks and slid his back over. He says he wanted to stay in the order. And Paul didn't let him. He was like, "You're part of the package."
What?
Yeah, it's crazy. There was at least 3 people out there in Cottonwood who still wanted to stay despite the whole property dispute. They believed it was the Lord's work, and there were some mistakes and some things that they didn't like that were happening. But
Do you think that Paul just pushed everybody out because he did not want that story to go around the order?
possibly, but I think more that it's like a cancer. They stopped from going to church because of Anna.
Why?
Because Anna would go to the news, and she was outwardly speaking against the order.
Oh, like me.
Yeah, like you.
So because of her, then 2 people who were innocent, basically, in Paul's eyes,
Yeah,
are a part of the package. Like,
yeah.
oh, you're out too.
So that was the same kind of deal out there. They thought, okay, he wants to stay in the order, but we know his wife doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
And we know we can't trust him if we can't trust his wife. And so they just said, you guys are all gone together. You're all,
Yeah.
the quote is, you're part of the package.
It's like mafia. Like, if you're not loyal enough, if we don't trust you enough, then you're out.
Yeah, see, and this guy was so loyal. I honestly think it probably could have destroyed their marriage, and he would have gone with the order.
Wow.
But because Paul said you're part of the package, he had no choice to stay with his wife and just find a new way of life.
Yeah, that's a good point too, because people have been asking, like, do they kick members out like they do in the FLDS? And technically, yeah,
Yeah,
they do.
this guy was a numbered man.
Wow.
They had no problem kicking him out.
So how many members were lost then because of the Cottonwood property dispute?
I mean, I could count them out, but it was a whole swath of people. And it was this is from the second wife of Brother Eldon. Like, these were...
Which is shocking. Brother Eldon is like so high and mighty.
And I mean, these guys, they're really good people, all of them, and they all got the axe all at once. So, and that triggered 3 more families to leave the order, because once these people heard what happened, they were like, what? They ended up leaving the order too. So they lost, I'll bet you they lost a good 30 people
Over that one dispute.
over that one dispute.
That is crazy. It makes me wonder, like, the whole notary thing and, like, how often that stuff does happen.
The order has evolved since 1935. It's evolved in, like, baby steps.
Yeah.
So, like, if you make a drastic move, you're going to get people questioning, and a lot of people aren't going to want to do it. You do it in baby steps. So it was a real friendly, hey, we have these new forms, and this is your inventory, this is your 10%.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody really tied the 2 together, but it was the Cottonwood case that triggered those things.
I remember always being so afraid that one day they could take all my stuff away if I didn't leave, like, before I was 18, because I was like, oh, I'm a minor, I can't be held accountable. But can those forms even hold up in court? I don't think they really can. You can't say, oh, well, you signed something your life away, so you have to give me your life.
In Utah, you have to be 18 to sign any kind of contract.
There's only so much that you can hold up in court with that signature, You can't say, oh, well, they signed this piece of paper, so they owe me everything. That doesn't make any sense. What was said in these meetings? Was it just a dispute going back and forth, like why Paul should have it, why they shouldn't have it?
One of those meetings, Paul says, you're getting real close to the line. He's like, what does that mean? And he says, you know what it means. You're getting real close to the line. And he was threatening his membership. You said you were going to do it because Paul gave his word. He was going to put it back in their name.
And he wasn't?
And he wasn't doing it. He was dragging his feet.
Wow.
And so they're like, this is getting old, Paul. We set up all these meetings with you. We have flying in from Minnesota, and you're not doing anything. you're giving us excuse after excuse.
Also, if it were to go to court, he could get in so much trouble for like the fake notaries if you guys could prove that.
Yes and no, that's the thing. Who's going to prove who actually did it?
That's true. Do we know who technically was the one?
No, and there's no way of proving it because these guys will have no problem perjuring themselves. They don't. They'll get up on the stand and lie through their teeth right after taking an oath. If it's for the order.
Protecting the Lord's kingdom. So then it resulted in losing a lot of members, and I'm sure Paul was probably more upset about losing the money.
Right. I'm sure. Like, I don't think he's lost any sleep over any of the members being lost.
Like, it's scary the lengths they will go to for money. For what, the Lord? No. Really just a money grab. The order has become such a... They see the kids as dollar signs, the girls as even bigger dollar signs for themselves because they can procreate more kids.
Whether you like the former leaders before Paul or not, I think it should be mentioned that they were different than Paul as far as greed goes. Brother Eldon, who started the order, he put out articles of incorporation in 1941. Mm-hmm. And if you look at Article 7, liability, I'll read it to you. It says the private property of the members of the corporation shall not be liable for the debts or operation of this corporation. And the corporation shall not be liable for the personal debts of its members. So basically what that means is there's definitely a separation, or there was.
Mm-hmm. So that's basically like protecting the members?
Yeah, it's like don't mix it up. Like if you have a pickup truck, that's your pickup truck.
Yeah. It's
not the corporation's. Mm-hmm. If you have a house, it's your house. And don't mix it up.
What else is on there? And how come us younger generation we don't know much about that?
That's deliberate. That's what I mean. They've taken so many baby steps since then.
Yeah.
The order is a totally different place than it used to be. When Brother Eldon was around, you had an inheritance.
Yeah.
He had 5 wives. He made sure every one of his kids had a value of $500 because when they bought this place in 1944, it was $3,500. Mm-hmm. She had 7 kids.
So he made sure that it was distributed.
Yeah, and so he did the same thing with Sister Ethel and her kids, and he did the same thing with those other kids. Rather than having them have land, they got the equivalent of $500.
Yeah.
He did that on his deathbed, basically, in 1948. He bought that property in 44, and he died in 48. And he knew what he was doing. He left them an inheritance.
Yeah.
Nowadays, you cannot do that.
So in comparison, that's how Eldon was when he died. What about Ortel? Did he distribute similarly or no?
Eldon only ran the order for 13 years before he died.
Okay.
Ortel had it from 1948 to, 1986?
Almost 40 years?
Yeah, so he had it for a lot longer time, like almost 4 times as long.
Yeah.
So it was a very slow evolution. And, a lot of people want to throw LaDonna under the bus, but she did make a lot of the changes, and Ortel implemented them.
Well, yeah, that's the thing, is LaDonna's like this big bad person in a lot of people's eyes, but Ortel was the leader that allowed it all.
Exactly. So she had a lot of the ideas, and then he implemented them, and over his time, it did start leaning to where, it wasn't as fair, and then when Paul took over, it just became, back in the day, you could date. Everything was totally different back then.
Yeah.
And so, when she got that property, she got it as an inheritance. She felt like she was the steward of that property, and she did not want it sold. And when she found out they were looking to sell it, mm-hmm. It made her furious. I've seen a video of her, an interview when she just probably 3 years before she died, 4 years before she died, and she right up to that 1990 when everybody's booted out, she basically says, "Forgive them, for they know not what they do." Like she was one of the original members of the order, and for Paul, I'm not trying to call him a snot-nosed punk, but to her, he was this little twerp.
Not care.
And you're gonna kick me out? Do you realize what you're doing here? But she always took the high road. She was just like, she was a peacemaker.
I almost feel like she probably wouldn't have been so. I think she fought more because there was all those people on that property. She was like, you can't do that to these people. I feel like if it was just her, she probably would have been like, Okay. But because it was all these people that were like she would have to feel almost kind of responsible.
She said something to that effect. Like, yeah, it isn't just me. It's all these people that live here, and
Right.
this isn't right. What you're doing is not right.
And it wasn't fair for him to not think about those things. And she's like, "What are you doing?"
There's opposites. Like today in the order, you cannot get an inheritance.
Mm-hmm.
Then why can you inherit a debt?
That's a good point. You definitely. So I don't know if you guys remember us talking about this with Michelle. Michelle was talking about how when Jesse's wife passed away, there was some debt, and he was trying to figure out how to distribute that debt onto his kids.
So basically, they oldest four have to carry the debt of their mom that just passed away, and that's the news that he was gonna give them.
And the youngest out of the four was like 10.
10 years
So
old.
she was gonna be 10 and going into life with the debt of her mom because my dad couldn't just suck it up and pay for it.
But it's like, so if the debt can't be wiped, then your property shouldn't be able to be wiped, you know? Why do you only inherit negative?
Exactly. I mean, it doesn't make any sense at all. Yeah, everybody falls for it because they've got the Lord's name on it.
It's just knowledge. If you don't have the knowledge, it's going to seem like impossible.
So true. So true.
And that's why I think that they really do believe the whole like buying the home and then dying and then your child has to buy it again back from the order is a similar system that happens out in the real world, which is so not true.
Yeah.
They don't even realize things like, you know, a minor paying rent to their parent is illegal. An extra dollar an hour as overtime is also illegal. It has to be time and a half. And then also buying property and things like that, credit cards and credit. All this stuff is just like so unfamiliar to them, but it's okay because they're in this society where none of that matters. They'll take care of it for you.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Too much trust.
Yeah.
And then this kind of stuff happens. Do you think now, because now that we're talking about this, I'm like so curious your perspective. So Eldon was pretty good. Then we have Ortel, which is like, eh. And then we have Paul, which is even worse.
Yeah.
Do you think the next one's in line, it's going to be a shit show after that?
I think so. I mean, I don't know how it can't be because it's a slow progression.
Yeah.
But it's like when the next leader gets this handed to him, it's going to be like this. Anybody is going to focus on their family first, and that's where you're going to get more and more corruption, you know.
Yep.
And so, and if you look back at order of history all the way from the beginning, I mean, you certain families got certain jobs, certain families got certain wives, certain families, some had it easy, some had it hard, you know.
It's very obvious that if there's a job position that's like, let's say someone like in my family wants it, but Paul's son wants it, Paul's son's gonna get it.
That's
Same
right.
with properties, same with women.
Yeah.
So if you're functioning that way, it's already flawed.
Yeah.
Already unfair.
If you look, each time that was handed over to the next guy, there more and more corruption came because they started taking care of their own people, and then they, you know, it's you're gonna get favoritism and everything else that way, you know. Real quick though, this is a story within the Cottonwood story. Ernie Ekstrom, he's passed away. I think he was number 20.
Oh yeah, we did an episode on him, so go link down below and I'll leave that episode. Culty Cup of Coffee, episode 20.
Anyway, he dies right before Ortel dies. Well, he had his home on his inventory for X amount of dollars.
Okay.
Well, his son, who was wealthy enough to buy it, he didn't want to buy it, but it was his dad's, and he was the only one of the kids that could afford it. Anyway, they bought the house
From the order?
from the order.
So he dies, it goes back to the order. Did he pay it off?
Yeah, it was paid off. Ernie and this son built this house.
Wow.
And so they already bought the house once. They paid to build the house. So it was paid off. He consecrates it to the order.
Yeah.
He dies. It's on his inventory. And so Alton steps forward and buys it.
Yeah.
Alton then consecrates it back to the order. Then Alton gets kicked out of the order. He has to buy it again.
Oh.
That family bought the same house 3 times.
Does it go up as the market goes up?
Yeah, in fact, the second time, when Ernie died, he had it on his inventory. Paul charged the family 5 times the inventory value.
Why? Because he just didn't like them.
He didn't like them.
Wow.
I mean, it was just unfair from the get-go.
So they buy the home back multiple times. I'm wondering how many times this has happened. I have also heard that if they like the family more, they'll keep the price. They'll be like, oh, you still have to buy it back from the order, even though your dad paid it off before he died. But we will sell it to you for the price that your dad bought it for. So it's still like, it's like cheaper, but
Yeah.
you're still getting ripped off.
Yeah, like they're doing you a solid.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
I was able to buy this house for $200,000, but on the Zillow, it's worth $500.
Yeah.
Your dad already paid for it.
This is the Lord's work.
The less knowledge you have, the less power.
So,
And that is why, they're like, don't watch Escape and Polygamy, don't watch him on his channel. Like, they're all lies. They can't get this knowledge and progress. And if they get the knowledge, I feel like they'd be like, this isn't fair. Either they'll leave or they'll want to see progression in the group, which I think I'm seeing happening. I don't know if you've noticed this. It seems like people are standing up more in recent years.
Yeah.
But who knows how long that's going to last. I almost feel like when this new leadership happens, which is going to have to happen after Paul, there's going to be a break-off. There's going to be a lot of people being like...
There definitely will. Yeah.
Especially when I'm hearing who is going to be the next ones. Have you been hearing?
As far as I know,
I've always heard that it was while I was even in the group, but now I'm hearing because the group's becoming so big that Paul is assigning 3 of his sons. That's what I'm hearing from people in and people who've just recently left, but who knows?
How would that work? What would stop him from having like a power struggle?
That's what I'm wondering. All Paul's boys.
I wonder if he's going to split up the order, like not split it up, but like split it up into like divisions, like a financial division and a religious division and maybe a business side or something.
Maybe. But it also is like, yes, Paul's the leader, but we all know that the brothers all run it. So maybe it's going to be similar to that, like they're just, the 3 of them are going to be the main ones running it.
Yeah, and which one's the prophet? Like, how does that work? I mean, who do you ask if you can go to college? Who do you ask about getting married, I mean...
That's a good point. If anyone from the order wants to give more information on this, my DMs are open.
Owning a piece of property and having it in your name today in the order is very discouraged.
I don't know anyone who does, other than like people high up in the church that are very trusted.
You can go down, I just did, you can go down to the county building, I did it yesterday, and got a list of LaDonna's boys.
And how many properties?
And what they own. How do you say, if you're Paul, how do you say, you can't have your house in your name, but my wife can have houses in her name?
Does his first wife, is her name on that home with the pool? They have the names on them?
Yeah.
Have the names on them?
They do.
The sister, does both of Paul's sisters have names on them?
I don't think so. Ruth isn't trusted.
Yeah. I've thought this before with Michelle. Michelle says that her grandma, she was kind of against Paul a lot of the time because she didn't understand why Paul was doing all the things he was doing. It was so, which meant that even though there's 9 kids of LaDonna's, only 8 really run everything because that sister spoke up so much, so she doesn't have as much control.
Right.
As like the other sister and the rest of the kids.
And I have to say, I think a lot of Ruth, for that reason, like she has integrity and she has a moral compass to stand up against that many of her siblings.
Right.
For what's right.
Yeah.
You gotta give her credit.
I feel like a lot of ex-members talk highly actually of her because she did. She wasn't like the rest of, like, only 1 in 9 actually had some common sense.
Yeah, I mean, you can see where the greed is at. I mean, there was no gold in my crawl space.
Yeah.
Was there any gold in your crawl space?
Exactly.
with the taking the kid out to the water with a gunpoint, like that. Today, that's kidnapping.
Nobody knows that story.
All that's buried. Like they fight. They get their attorneys on that, and they get it wiped off of there.
Yeah.
They get their arrest records expunged.
Where's that kid now? I would love to talk to him.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, because I want to tell that story about Daniel kidnapping, but then if he were to sue me for slander, I would have to find that kid and be like, this kid.
Yeah.
It's a thing. It really happened, but was there a police report?
Oh, I'm not sure about. I believe there was. I don't know what it was, but it was all over the newspapers.
It was?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Definitely need to do an episode on that. I don't know if I'll keep this part in, but if I do keep this part in, what we're discussing is that Daniel did basically a kidnapping on an outside boy that was I guess the outside boy was like robbing some cars.
Daniel's wives had pitched in on this stereo for his birthday or something or Christmas. I don't know what. But anyway, this kid was robbing it, and he caught him. Daniel caught him in the act.
He's a minor.
Daniel had a gun, and he basically got this kid in his car, and he took him out. I heard it was out here by the gun club, which is like a swampy area where they used to shoot birds and stuff.
Yeah.
And he had this kid hike out in the water at gunpoint. And this kid said he thought he was going to die. famous quote that everybody knows is, how does it feel to be waist deep in water, or something to that effect. Like, I think he was just scaring this kid or something. But
Probably loving it too. He's very, from what Daniel's kids have told me, he seems like a sadist.
yeah.
He enjoys this type of like manipulative, like, I don't know. I can't even fully wrap my brain around it.
I've heard he's like that too. I think he enjoys seeing people terrified of him.
Which is like, it freaks me out because these are the stories we know about.
Yeah.
What do we not know?
Right.
Also, how come he didn't go to jail for that?
You know, this was one of the first stories that made the order infamous, really, is Daniel put him on the map with that story.
Yeah.
And then
He did go to the police.
there's a lot of other stories, but then he did the whole barn thing,
Yeah.
the beating.
Beating up his own daughter.
That made the news.
It's insane that he has not. He was in jail on work release after he almost beat his daughter to death. And it's like, and then he has this track record, yet why is he out here just running around? Like,
Yeah.
but that's why we keep talking about it, because it's like, if you're not going to do anything, we're going to keep sharing these stories, and it kind of makes Utah look silly.
Yeah.
They're just like letting this stuff happen.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think with the more voices and the more people speaking out about it, then something's going to have to change. Hopefully.
We can cross our fingers.
Definitely. Okay, I think I might have this be a part 1, part 2. I'm still figuring out because we've just been recording for over an hour. But if you guys have any questions about this, which I feel like a lot of people are going to have questions, leave them in the comment box down below and we can see if we can do some type of another video answering, or if I can get this, if you want to do a part 1, part 2.
Sounds good.
All right. I wish I could be like, thank you to so-and-so for being here, but
Well, thanks for having me. This is awesome.
you'll never know who this is.